You're listening to the Podcast Detroit Network. Visit www.podcastdetroit.com for more information.
Welcome to Smart Sex, Smart Love, where talking about sex goes beyond the taboos and talking about love goes beyond the honeymoon. I'm Dr. Joe Court. Thanks for tuning in. Hello, and welcome to the first show of Season 2 of Smart Sex, Smart Love with me, Dr. Joe Court. I'm so pleased to be back in the studio. We're talking about sex goes beyond the taboo, and talking about love goes beyond the honeymoon. I'm kicking off the new season with one of the most taboo topics out there, mother-son incest. Despite society's denial of it, mother-son incest does happen, and most people don't want to think about it, talk about it, or do anything about it. We idealize mothers and never want to think of them as behaving abusively or of harboring bad or sexual intentions toward their own offspring. Overcoming this taboo about the reality of mother-son incest is not easy for either victim or therapist. Here with me today is Dr. Hani Miletski. Hani is a psychotherapist in private practice in Bethesda, Maryland, with over 26 years of clinical experience. She's the author of the only solid, valuable book about this topic, Mother-Son Incest, The Unthinkable Broken Taboo Persists. And it is a revered voice on a mother-son sexual abusive relationship. Welcome, Hani.
Thank you.
I'm so glad to have you here. I've wanted you here last season, but we filled up really fast. So I thought this season I'm going to ask you first. So thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me.
I also want to tell the listeners that, and you know this, you were the reason that I actually became a certified sex therapist. I was at a talk, and I think it has to be almost 20 years ago, maybe 2005, 4, something like that.
Yeah.
And I was doing a talk on sexual abuse. And I remember, this is what I remember. You came up to me after, and you appreciated the talk. You were very gracious to me. And then you very graciously let me know, validly, that it was missing sexual health information and that I didn't have a good sensibility about it or understanding. You didn't say those words, but that was
memory.
Yeah. Oh, I remember it like yesterday. And then that became my journey into becoming one. So thank you.
You're welcome. I'm so happy you took that journey.
Me too. And I realized when looking back, I really always did have a sexual health sensibility, but it was covered up with all the sexual trauma work I did, the sex addiction, quote unquote, work I did. And that's all gone. Not the sexual trauma. I still do that, but the sexual health part is right there.
Yeah, of course.
All right. So can you talk about why did you pick this topic to be your book?
Well, this goes a long way back when I was in my master's program for social work. I went to Catholic University in Washington, D.C., and our master's program or thesis was supposed to be an article for publication. And I knew I was going to be a sex therapist. So I was trying to find a subject that has something to do with sex. But I was going to Catholic University, so I had to be mindful of that, and I couldn't choose, something about orgasm or whatever. So I decided to do something about sexual abuse. And my advisor told me that I need to really narrow it down. So I thought, okay, I'm going to do something about incest because that sounded more interesting, something that I haven't heard about that much. And she said, you need to narrow it down even more. So I thought, okay, what haven't I heard about at all? And I thought, okay, mother-son incest, it probably doesn't happen. And so I'm just going to find some resources that say that it doesn't happen. And that will be basically my paper. It's going to be easy peasy.
Yes.
So I started researching, and I found out that I was very wrong, that it happens. People don't talk about it, but it happens. And I started writing, and it became a lot larger than an article. It ended up being a book, a small book, but a book.
Yeah, and a very good book. And it doesn't stay in print very much, right? Because it's not widely sought after. Is that true?
It's It's true. I mean, the first edition was published by the Cipher Society in 2000, in 1995, a long time ago. And then in 2006, they asked me to, add more to it and make it, more up to date. Mm-hmm. So I did that, and then I took the rights back and I decided to self-publish it. So the new edition, that is the Mother-Son Incest, the Unthinkable Broken Taboo Persists, is the one that I myself self-publish.
And I think that's great. You do that, and I don't mean that when I say that it doesn't stay in print. It's not because of the content, because it's great content. This is not a sought after topic. In fact, you probably already know this. When you Google mother-son incest, your book comes up, and then thousands and thousands of incest porn sites come up.
Right.
So people have eroticized this, which is a sexual, fantasy, and we could talk about that too. But the actual idea of mothers doing this, as I started out in this beginning, is just not even talked about. In fact, I always say, I used to love watching Oprah. She was on 25 years, and she would have multiple shows every season on sexual abuse. Multiple. Mm-hmm. Never was there a show until I think the season before the last. She did a segment on mother-son incest. It was a segment, and it was short and it was brief. And Oprah, I know she's pop culture, but she was still very smart about her show. You would think that there would be more about that, but even she or her producers didn't think of it as that much.
It's true. I mean, I have not seen that, but I know that Oprah was like one of the first to talk about childhood sexual abuse.
I remember it vividly in the 80s when she came out on live. She was on TV live, I think it was, and she admitted it. Yeah. And you hear all the time more and more, you always hear about when women have been sexually abused by male perpetrators, but you rarely hear, or less so, with men abused, obviously by their mothers, but by female perpetrators. Would you agree?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's getting better. You hear more about it, but it's still rare.
Yeah. And why do you think it is? I think it's because mothers are so taboo to talk about negatively, but what do you think?
Well, for sure. I mean, first of all, the idea that a woman will be the sexual abuser is also hard for people to accept. First of all, the women don't have penises. So people think, okay, if you don't have a penis, how much harm can you already do? Mm-hmm. And besides, women are not that interested in sex. It's all these myths. And they love children, and they're so gentle and all that kind of stuff. And then, if you can accept the fact that women can do that, mothers is sort of like another layer. I mean, mothers are like holy. There's no way they can do anything like this. They love their children. They'll do anything for their children. And it's just, unthinkable.
Do you think, and if so, how do you think mothers do it differently than fathers, or women do it differently than men?
For sure. I mean, first of all, they don't have penises.
Right, exactly.
Although a lot of the sexual abuse perpetrated by men doesn't involve penises either. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of different ways to sexually molest children.
Great point.
But women have the advantage, so to speak, of being seductive, of taking care of the children. So there's a lot of hygiene involved. And so a lot of the sexual molestation can be disguised by, taking care of the children and, cleaning them and bathing them and, touching them sort of like because sort of you have to. There's also, when the children are older, like teenagers, perhaps, or like around puberty, the mothers can ask the son, to help her, get dressed and zip her dress and, all kinds of things like that usually you don't see with men.
That's a very good point. That's what I hear in my office. It's often, most of the stories are, she was taking care of me. It was in the bathtub. She'd come in when I was in the tub, or she'd be on the toilet and I'd be on the toilet and she'd come in, those kinds of things.
Right. Or sleeping at night, sleeping together in the same bed and cuddling, that could be another way.
Yep. I've had male clients say that to me too, that dad was, they had a fight, or he was out of the bedroom, or he was on a trip. And based on that, then she would bring him in. And so would you say that, I always say this, but I'd like your thoughts. You're the expert on this, that when men do it, it's more overt. When women do it, it's more covert.
Exactly. Because when they do it under the guise of, how you say, guys?
Yes. Uh-huh.
Guys. Of taking care of you and bathing you and cleaning you and hugging you and all that kind of stuff, the kid ends up being very confused because the mother is supposedly doing something really nice for them and taking care of them, but it feels weird. It feels like something is wrong and they don't know what's going on, which makes it even worse sometimes.
Right. The experience is, it feels icky, it feels weird. And so they describe that and they can't put it into words.
Exactly.
Right. So as a therapist, we have to help them find those words. And that's tricky because it's like finding an invisible man in the room.
Right. And you also have to worry about not putting any ideas in their heads that were not there.
Yes.
So you have to kind of work on a very thin line there.
And sometimes it can be so overt that you think to yourself, I think as a therapist, I'm listening, I'm thinking, oh my God, that's totally sexual abuse. And they're not seeing it that way. Like the mother saying, I've had this a lot. I don't know if you've had this, where men say, my mother asked me in my teenage years to show her my erect penis to make sure I was growing properly. Right. My mother grabbed me and said, oh my God, you're so much bigger than your dad, like that.
Right. And it's so inappropriate and they don't know any better, the kids.
Right. They think it's my mom. They just dismiss the fact that it would be anything negative.
Right. I mean, she loves me. She wouldn't harm me. Whatever she does because that's the way it's supposed to be, even if it doesn't feel good.
Yeah. What would you say? Is there a kind of motherly love that crosses over into incest behavior?
Well, I think the crossing over is when the son begins to feel uncomfortable and the mother doesn't care, doesn't pay attention and doesn't care. Because there are a lot of behaviors that could be normal, in many cultures and in many homes. Every relationship, every household acts differently. Every relationship is different. Every culture is different. So it's hard to say, you can't do this and you can't do that. Of course, we're not talking about the overt sexual abuse. But I think like if a mother hugs her teenage son and the son is sort of like squirming and doesn't know what to do with himself and obviously feels uncomfortable, that's when the mother, the adult, has to say, okay, he doesn't like it. I should back off. I shouldn't do this anymore, at least for now, until he grows up and it's okay to hug him again or something along those lines. Mm-hmm. So I think it's the responsibility of the mothers, the adults, to really pay attention and see when the kid is uncomfortable and act appropriately.
Right. So I think that mothers who have healthy instincts as maternal instincts, she would get that and see that and catch herself. But the mothers who don't.
Right. And that is the problem, because most of the women who are perpetrators of mother-son incest are women who are very needy. And they don't think about anybody else. They don't pay attention. I don't think in most cases, they don't even do it on purpose. They're just so needy and they want the kid to hug them and they want, they just need something. Usually there's no partner around. And so the kid becomes the partner.
Right. It's really based on a hole she's trying to fill in herself. And it could also be that she, too, was sexually abused in some way. And is that correct?
It's possible. I don't like to make that reference that everybody who was sexually abused ends up sexually abuse others.
Right.
because it happens, but it doesn't always happen. And so I just don't like to go there,
Good point. It's like a correlation, not a causation.
Right.
I agree, because people get freaked out in my office. If I was sexually abused, does that mean I'm going to do this to my kids? And I say exactly what you just said. It does not automatically indicate
right.
that.
And that's one of the reasons why a lot of the men don't come forward and don't talk about it, because they're afraid that if, people find out that they were sexually abused, that they will be immediately accused of sexually abusing others.
Yeah, that makes sense. You say the 5 misconceptions about mother-son incest include mother-son incest means intercourse, boys cannot be victims of sexual abuse, what harm can be done without a penis, you've already said that, motherly love cannot be sexual, and one of them must be crazy. I love these. These are really important. I listed them on purpose. Do you want to expand on any of those?
Sure. First of all, the mother-son incest means intercourse. I think I mentioned that in the beginning. When people think about sexual abuse, they immediately think about intercourse.
Mm-hmm.
When people think about sex, they immediately think about intercourse.
Yes.
But sex and abuse can be so many other things. And because you don't hear a lot of cases of mother and son having intercourse per se, people think, okay, it never exists. It doesn't happen because you never hear about that. But there's a lot of other ways to abuse a child.
And it's the experienced, a lot of the guys I talked to, right, because that wasn't the case, she may not have overtly touched him in a certain way in his genitals. It may not have been, like you say, intercourse. So they feel, like you say, they feel crazy. Like, how could this be? And It takes a lot of time in therapy to get them to understand that mothers don't do that with sons.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And there's all these covert sexual touching and behavior that people just don't make sense of. That it doesn't sound like that was incest. That was just, my mother was like that. That's the way she was. The second one is boys cannot be victims of sexual abuse. And that's another one that, people think that because boys are supposed to love sex, the more the better. And they're supposed to be strong and, maybe men can do something to other men, even though people think that's rare, which is not rare.
Right.
But the idea that women can do that, and I'm going to the next one, what harm can be done without a penis? It's all combined. Men cannot be abused, or boys cannot be abused because they're supposed to want it. So, I'm not talking specifically about mothers, but if anybody suggests to a kid to have sex, they most likely will want it because kids love sex and they're so preoccupied with that. And if it's a woman and if it's an older woman, it's like, wow, it's great for this kid. And it's just all these ideas that people have in their head that don't allow them to actually see what's going on, that it is abuse, that it does happen. And that the boys can be very miserable because of that. And they have nobody to turn to.
And no words for it, so they don't even know why they're miserable.
Exactly, because they're supposed to be happy about it. And then we have the motherly love cannot be sexual, which we talked about already, that, who can even fathom that mothers can do anything like that? Mm-hmm. So it must not exist. And the last one of them must be crazy, is, I think, the one that, to me, makes the most sense. Because that's what I used to say. If it happens, one of them must be crazy because it just cannot happen. It's impossible,
Yes.
But it does happen.
So how do you know, what kinds of ways do men manifest this, that they end up coming into your office? Are there certain types of behaviors or problems or dysfunctions that occur?
Well, it can affect men in a lot of different ways. But I think mostly it is the way of having attachment issues and how they relate to partners.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them end up being attracted to older women, and some of them like much, much older women. And they come to my office because they know something is not right. They want to have a relationship with somebody their age. They want to have kids, but they're not attracted by them. It doesn't do it. It doesn't do it for them. And in their fantasies and their pornography that they're watching these older women, and they feel really bad about it. Obviously.
Right. And I think it's important because I think this is such a shift in our culture to these younger people, in gay men and straight men and bi men and men, where they're attracted to older people. It's not always related to sexual abuse or some kind of inappropriateness, but it can be.
True. Exactly.
Right. I mean, the older woman is a cougar, right? And I actually wrote this article. I thought it was kind of clever. It did not catch on. I thought if older women could be cougars, I'm an older guy. Can I be a cougar? But nobody liked it. It did not catch on. I try to put some humor in some of this because it's so dark. It is terrible, isn't it?
It is. It's so sad.
It's so sad because mom even though shouldn't be this way, dads can protect children too, and men can protect children, but mom is expected in our culture to be the protector. So when she's the perpetrator, it's shocking.
I know. People cannot even believe, when there's a situation where the male partner abuses the kids, they can't believe that the mother let it happen.
Yes, right.
So just imagining that she actually did something.
Right. And in this case, when mom's doing it, dad's letting it happen. He's turning away.
Right. Or he's not there.
Or he's not there. Exactly. Earlier, you said about mothers cuddling with their sons in bed. What would I know you can't make any specific ages, but when is it inappropriate to keep doing that with the son for a mother?
First of all, I think the mother has to, like I said before, be very mindful about how the kid reacts. It could be not even related to any sexual aspect. If the kid is not comfortable, the mother has to know to get away and not do this. But I think definitely when the kid gets into puberty and, hormones start going crazy and every thought or every touch gives the kid an erection, you definitely do not want to cuddle your son at that time, at that age, or sleep with the son, because then the being with the mother and having the mother touch you or you touch the mother becomes associated with erections, with sexual arousal. Yes. And that gets all messed up.
That makes sense. And I like what you said earlier, that touch doesn't have to be physical, and I've had men talk in my office. Mom wore a sheer nightgown with nothing underneath. Mom would run from the bathroom to the bedroom without anything on. And some people, there are nudist families, right? And there are people that,
exactly.
But it's her intention behind it. Would you agree?
Right. That's why I keep saying she has to be mindful, because like you said, there are families where they walk around in the nude and that's normal, and everybody's fine with that, and they can continue to do this forever. But if they get a kid that is uncomfortable about it or starts getting erections all the time when they see their mom, they have to change their ways.
I don't know if you remember this, but a while back I buy your book. I give it out to my clients. And by the way, I'll say this at the end too, but your book is available on your website, www.drmiletski, DrMiletski.com.
Thank you.
But on Amazon, you sell it there too, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you remember me showing you this forum where hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of men talk about the fact they loved having sex with their mother, they loved what she did, and they continued it into their adulthood?
Yeah.
What do you think of that? I have to tell you, I know I'm talking shocking. It shocks me, and it shouldn't, but it does. What do you think of it?
I know, and I have gotten a lot of emails from guys who were very upset about my book because they said that, what they had with their mother was love, and it was a wonderful relationship, and how dare I call it anything bad.
Yep.
And you know, I think it's part of the denial. You know, I think a lot of guys who have been in these situations, you know, they have to explain it to themselves in some way. They have to live with themselves. So the best way for them to explain it to themselves is that it was just a wonderful experience and their mother loved them in ways that cannot be described. And they had this special relationship and, you know, which I'm sure felt wonderful, you know, on a physical level. Mm-hmm. But emotionally, I think it messed them up.
You know, I had the privilege, actually, to Dan Savage, the sex educator, podcaster, looking for somebody to write about. Oh, he had somebody who, the problem was the guy had been sexually abused by his mother. He enjoyed it and admitted that to his girlfriend, and she was completely turned off. And he let me, you know, speak on that. But I don't think I would have.
I was on it too.
Oh, that's right. We both were. I'm sorry. I forgot. Yeah. You're right. And so, right. What I would not have known that was even a thing, though, if it wasn't for that Amazon forum.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And, you know, we have to make room. What do you think of this? I think we have to make room for the fact that there are some people that do enjoy it, that the mother and the son do have. Maybe they do have a special relationship. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I mean, my philosophy is that if somebody does not see what happened to them as abuse, I do not, you know, try to convince them of that.
Right. Me either.
Because, you know, if their defense mechanism is working for them and it's doing good, I'm not going to mess it up for them. Mm-hmm. But if they come to me because they have problems because of that, then we have to accept what happened in order to move on, you know, in order to change things.
And what's happening in their adulthood is one thing, but I always say to people, if you're 5 and the perpetrator is older than you as a teenager or an adult, young adult, whatever, that, like you said, it is abuse, whether you want to call it that or not. It's non-consent. Children can't consent to adult sexual behavior.
Right. I mean, legally, if they're 5 years older, it's abuse.
Yeah, right. Very good point.
Yeah.
We're getting close to the end. I wonder if there's anything I didn't ask you that you wanted to make sure we talked about.
I'm sure there's a lot of things, but the one thing that kind of came to my mind when you were talking about the women, the mothers running around in see-through lingerie, it reminded me of one of my clients who I was working with for many years. And he came for other reasons. And after years of working with him, he mentioned to me one day that his mother did that. And she used to leave the door open when she went to the bathroom. Mm. And I said to him, how come you never told me about that? And he was in tears. He was crying. It was so hard for him to admit that. And the point that I'm trying to make here is that it is so hard sometimes, most times, I think, for men to admit anything like that. And it may take years in therapy for them to even say anything about that, unless they come in for that reason.
Right. And sometimes it's not even on the forefront of their mind, right?
Exactly.
It's so compartmentalized, they don't even connect to it.
Right. But it is embedded and it is so painful.
And I'm glad that's the point we're ending on, because that needs to be said, you know, that people need to understand that, you know, because no one thinks of mothers doing this, not even the victims think of mothers, their own mothers. Yeah. So I want to thank you so much. You know, you're the author of Mother, Son, Incest, The Unthinkable Broken Taboo Persists, and it's available in softcover and as an ebook on her website, www.drmiletski.com, drmiletski.com. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And people don't know this, but we're doing this on Zoom because of COVID, and I can see you. You can't see me because I'm in my robe and I wasn't prepared. And you look as beautiful as you always did.
Thank you. And I probably was looking like everywhere because I don't see you.
You look great. You do. You really do. Thank you. I want to thank you, Dr. Hani, for being my guest. And if you enjoyed my show, Please don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. And also follow me on Instagram and on Twitter at Dr. Joe Court, DrJoeKort. I'll see you next time. Take care and be safe. Thanks for listening to this episode of Smart Sex, Smart Love. I'm Dr. Joe Court, and you can find me on joecourt.com. That's JoeKort.com. See you next time.